I know we're having a lot of fun today, but it wouldn't be the news if I didn't have some depressing topics to discuss. So, our next story is a bit of a doozy.
Bummer time.
Bummer time. The American Psychological Association reports that Gen Z adults and millennials have the worst mental health and suicide rates than any living generation. People in their 20s are more likely to call out of work for a mental health day than people over 40. The trend can also be seen in the UK, where Gen Z and young millennial employees are missing the equivalent of 1 day of work per week due to mental health concerns. Gen Zers under age 18 are also suffering. Middle school and high school girls have some of the highest levels of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Nearly 30% of teen girls have seriously considered attempting suicide, and 57% say they feel persistently sad or hopeless, according to data from the CDC.
What do you think is the cause behind this mental health decline?
Well, a report by Gallup and the Walton Family Foundation finds that people between 12 and 27 years old have the poorest mental health of any generation for a variety of reasons, but the biggest reason is that Gen Z mainly socializes online rather than in person. And you really don't get the same bonding chemicals online as you would in face-to-face interactions. When you're looking online, almost everything you see has been curated by people. It's not necessarily representative of their real lives. Even when people are going online and posting how sad and depressed they are on social media, a lot of times it's very performative and curated to get a specific response from the audience. And as a woman, I can definitely relate to comparing my body, myself, my career, my family to anybody else that I see online, and it does make me feel bad about myself sometimes. So if young girls are seeing this and they think that a filtered woman is reality, of course that's going to affect their mental health. Parents and teachers really need to talk to young teenagers about these issues and kind of, unveil the reality that this is mostly filtered and curated. Most people's lives don't look the way they do online.
So everything you're seeing online is an illusion.
Yeah, a lot of what you're seeing online is an illusion. It's curated specifically to make yourself look really good. People aren't necessarily seeing all the mundane things of life. They're not seeing the struggles of life. They're not seeing the real world. And if you're not getting out in the world and meeting people in person, then you're not going to have good relationships with people. There's no real intimacy in that. And also online, there's a lot more bullying. We didn't have to do that. We didn't have social media as older millennials until we were adults. I was already in college, so my knowledge of how this would affect me was a little bit better than somebody who's super young and they don't know any different.
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't dealing with YouTube comments until I was in my 30s, and it was a problem for me to try to comprehend how certain people can possibly think like this. And then I finally had to come to the conclusion that YouTube comments represent all possible consciousness of people. Anything that person can think, someone will type it in. And they can't help it because they can't express themselves anywhere else but online.
And some of it is bots. You have to remember, actually a lot of it is bots. So it's not even necessarily real people that are leaving these comments. And you can kind of tell when they don't really make any sense.
Yeah, so a person who's a young developing mind in high school or middle school, that would be torment to deal with the type of negative comments that you're inevitably going to get just by presenting yourself online in any capacity.
Our generation now is the digital generation. So if we're online, we're seeing so many depressing news stories in our social media feeds, constantly seeing the war in Ukraine, constantly seeing footage of the war in Palestine, constantly seeing, people fighting in America. So all you're seeing is this negativity, and that's what the algorithms cater to. So of course people are gonna feel incredibly depressed when they see nothing but what is curated online. That's not necessarily the only thing that's happening in the world.
That's true.
Yeah, back in the day, our parents would be informed, but they would mostly see the news at certain times of the day and then move on. It wasn't like every time they turned on their phone, they were just inundated with all this chaos.
That's true. Anytime you turn on your phone, you're gonna get a splash of maybe something positive. There's almost always something negative going on.
Yeah, and the algorithms really fuel anything that's gonna be controversial or that's going to get people to have an emotional response. And people are more likely to have an emotional response over something that's negative than something that's positive, which is just unfortunate.
That's true too. I guess having an awareness of those things going on can help people's mental health, other than suffering under the delusion that everything's terrible and there's nothing I can do and I can't escape it. But I think it is a good idea to like take a break from social media. Definitely, like I haven't looked at any war footage, just like, because I need to be creative, and if I look at something that's super upsetting, it's going to disrupt my creativity during the day. So looking at war footage is something I actively avoid. I know there's a war going on. I don't know anything about it. I am avoiding knowing anything about this war.
Ignorance is bliss.
My ignorance is keeping me from corrupting a day of being creative and taking care of myself.
Housing and college are also way too expensive for many young people, and a lot of us don't earn a living wage. So of course people are anxious, and their parents even worry about their future. Nearly 80% of Americans polled nationally said they don't expect life for their children to be better for their own generation. So collectively, it appears that we're losing hope.
How do you think that this is going to affect the future of our country?
Well, mental health problems reduce social trust, labor force participation, entrepreneurship, and they really prevent progress. If people are not hopeful about the future and they don't have good mental health, then they tend to be less successful and they perceive their lives as not having much meaning. So this is a very unfortunate trend, and hopefully things in our country will reverse and make young people feel a little bit more hopeful and like their futures can be bright.